Hey folks, welcome back to DCS. Today we're flying the Su-25a Frogfoot on Enigma's Cold War server. We're in the 1970 set. We're about to head on merge with an F5. He does get a few hits in as we pass, and as I start to pull you'll see that he did cause a fuel leak, so we are a little bit on the clock here. We're also still carrying some ordnance, but I want to see if I can dogfight this guy without dropping it. I've used about half of what I brought, and I reckon that if I can read his energy well, I don't need to drop my ordnance, and then I can continue to hit ground targets after I've dealt with him. So he's turning quite lazily, he's flat turning, he's quite high up. So I used my energy to climb up to him. And then what he does is start to dive away again, so he's kind of extending enough that I actually get a chance to get my nose back onto him, which is going to give him more energy, but he isn't actually running away, he's just extending enough to give me an angle, which I can actually capitalise on. So he's flat turning on the deck right now. F5 doesn't want a flat turn on the deck, you want to be like yo-yoing your energy and then turning through the dives so that you retain your speed, because if you just keep turning on the deck you just get slower and slower and slower. As we get close we get guns on and he jinks upwards, which is obviously just going to make him slower. He's off his burner because he's kicking black smoke out, and he turns as he's climbing, so these are all things that are just going to bleed his speed down. I'm just basically stalled out, sitting on my engines vertically right now, and what that means is I can just fall back down and point at him wherever he is. I've dropped my landing flaps, and he just keeps reversing his turn in front of me. With landing flaps down I can just sit behind him all day. He starts to panic and dives, and he very nearly pancakes it here. So I'm raising the flaps back up. I was expecting that to be the end of him. We're turning back nose hot because I reckon I can get an R60 off, and I want to get one off as quickly as possible because he's heading towards the sun, so if I leave it too late then the sun will decoy the missile. He flares, but it's a little bit too late. I managed to splash him, so after that I was a little bit on the clock with the fuel leak, but we managed to get some more ground ordnance off and then go back to rearm. Different sortie, and this time we're heading into contested airspace. You can see some smoke trails on my left side from Strela launchers. Both teams get Strelas on the front line on Enigmas in the 1970s weapon set. They're very easy to decoy though, so I decided to go and help the thing it was shooting at. Unfortunately there is a lot of SPAA on the ground, and we're about to get heavily shredded by a Vulcan. But I have at least spotted the friendly that's in distress. It's a 21 with an F5 on his 6. All I'm doing is periodically hitting the flare button. If that Strela shoots at me again, it's not going to hit me because they're just very easy to decoy. F5 knows we're here now, so he caused a little bit of a disturbance, and he tries to reverse his turn on the 21, but we managed to intercept it and get some gun hits in, and thankfully that takes his wing off, so nice kill. After this we RTB. I do have a little bit of difficulty on landing because of how heavily shredded we got. The Vulcan managed to take one of my flaps off, which means that I couldn't use them for landing because the asymmetric lift was just rolling me over. The last dogfight clip before we get on to the main event. There's a Sabre up ahead that just fired a Fox 2 at a teammate. Just fired a second Fox 2 at a teammate. So I know he doesn't have any more missiles left. The Sabre is a threat to me in the Frogfoot in a way that the F5 isn't, because the F86 doesn't really pull a lot of AOA, which means that even though it doesn't have a lot of thrust, it retains energy far better than the F5 does, just by way of it not turning itself into an air brake by nosing up too much. So I do have to be careful with how I play this, but at the minute he is distracted by a teammate still, so all I'm trying to do is posture for a missile shot in the hope that I can clear my friendly 6. And just like with the last guy, I'm not ditching my ground ordnance in the hope that I'll be able to do something with it afterwards. Annoyingly that R60 doesn't connect. The Sabre has a really annoyingly low IR signature for some reason. He's reversing his turn in front of me here, so I'm just going to nose down, get some speed up. and then after he got a bit built up, we'll nose back up into him. I think at this point he spots me, and for some reason he decides to abandon chase on the teammate and just focus on me, even though that I could probably tank his 50 kills for days. So we enter a rolling scissor with him, drop the landing flaps just like I did with the F5, and we're just sort of matching each other quite well through this despite me having all this extra weight on. He's about to cross behind me, and I reckon I'd have probably got him in front on the next turn, but friendly manages to splash him, so not going to complain too much about that one. So on to the main event. Taking off from... can't remember which airbase we're at. I want to say Hammer, but I actually don't think it is. But anyway, the front line's really not that far away, so once we're up in the air we'll make our way over there. We're carrying 2 rocket pods with HE frag rockets. I usually bring HE, but I forgot to change it. So we've got 40 rockets. We've got 4 S-25Ls and 2 KH-25MLs. So that's 2 longish range laser guided missiles, 4 medium range laser guided missiles, and then 40 dumb rockets with a pretty crap splash damage, to be honest. But it'll be just fine for hitting trucks and barracks buildings and stuff. So gears and flaps up, rolling in towards the AO. It was Hammer, I was right. So we can see some red smoke in the distance. And what we're going to do is point the laser thingy at it from back here. And this used to work a while ago. What I'm going to do is try and loft a KH-25ML at extreme range, so I've hit the launch permission override key. You don't get any kind of UI symbology to say that you've done it, which is a little bit annoying. But you know it's on because it lets you launch a missile from like way outside the range. So the range scale is the thing around the outside edge of the pipper, and the thick part is like your launch window. So you see it's not ticking down just yet because we're still massively outside the window. I'm going to fire again because I don't think the first missile is going to hit, and it just splashed off to the left of the pipper. A few patches ago they updated the external models for how these missiles look, like they made them look a lot better, and when that came in this tactic seems to have died a death, because that first missile would have guarded him pretty well before that change was made. After you've had the laser on for too long it kind of burns out, so I wasn't able to use it to range the rocket, so I kind of just eyeballed it. Thankfully they all go pretty much where I want them to, but because they're HE frag and not just HE, they don't really have the desired effect, and I don't think they actually get anything from it, which is a little bit annoying. Here's a better example from a different sortie of how you can fire 2 missiles back to back using the same instance of the laser so that you don't have the burnout problem. So we're going to fire off a KH-25ML, and then we're going to wait for it to get about halfway to the target, and then we're going to launch again. Then all you need to do is wait for the first one to hit the target, and then you switch your aim point to the next target. If you do this well and you have enough of the same type of missile, then you can really just ripple off like a bunch of them on the same pass, which works out really nicely as a quick way of just burning through all your ammunition. Rolling back hot on another JTAC marked red smoke. And you can see the range scale. This is an S-25 we're using this time. That thick portion is much further down the scale than it was with the KH-25MLs. What we're doing here is the same tactic where we're using the launch permission override to fire from massively outside the range. Had I not done that, I wouldn't be able to launch them normally until about now, as the fatter section of the range scale starts to tick down. So by using launch permission override, you're able to stay hugely outside the range of gun-based surface-to-air platforms, which is pretty nice. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the ripple thing on that approach, but I just didn't see the targets well enough to know what I was shooting at. It's always better to try and prioritise the more dangerous threats first. So JTAC have lased a second group next to the first group now. not having any kind of zoom makes it really difficult to tell what it is you're actually shooting at, and I kind of hate the red smoke, to be honest, because if it's coming from a certain angle it just completely obscures your view of everything else. I'm not actually sure if what I'm shooting at right now is a target, but I think it's a little Bofors gun. But it might be dead already because they look exactly the same whether they're dead or alive. Checking the kill feed as we egress, and we didn't get anything for that, so that was a little bit of a waste. Coming back around, climbing up as we go a little bit, and rolling back in for the last S-25L that we're carrying. So I can see like a bunker thing, I can see some tracer fire from 2 different angles. This actually is an active Bofors because I can see it shooting at me. There's also one shooting at me from the left, so whilst guiding that missile in, I have to try and dodge incoming fire from 2 different directions. And then we brake hard and stay really low so that they can't shoot at me for as long, so I'll get out of line of sight faster. As we were diving, there was an EWR report saying that there was an A10 and an A4 within 10 kilometers. There's the update, so they're within 8 now. Looking off to the right and zooming in, I can actually see the A10 from here, so we're going to roll in hot on him. You can see he's popping flares, and at this point I thought he was turning away from me, he's actually turned in, and I spot the Skyhawk and foolishly decide to switch targets to him, and as we do that, the A10 manages to get gun hits on me. Unbelievably, we don't die. I have no idea how we didn't die. All I suffered from that was some damage to my elevator, and it's basically limited my pitch to about 50%. So I can't snapshot anymore, I can't really pull the nose around quickly. On the upside, that does mean that we retain energy even better than we did before, because I can't pull hard enough to bleed it off. So as we turn back around for the A10, I spot the Skyhawk in the distance, and I switch targets to the Skyhawk, hoping to get hits in the head-on. Doesn't work, and then we re-engage the A10 instead, which is he's just turning himself into a sitting duck in front of me. Not a fan of the gun set on the Froggy, but we do manage to get some good hits in, set one of his engines on fire and knock off half of his tail section. And it seems that he's span out as a result of that, so he's going to go down in due time. I can see a missile launch to my 10, and a splash just happened as well, so zooming in on that, see that the thing that's still airworthy is a Skyhawk, so he must have just killed that friendly that was around. He's in a left-hand turn to come back head-on with me, so I'm going to add the little gun cage thing to aid my aiming, because I hate gyro pippers, and thankfully I managed to get hits in the head-on and take him down. Skyhawk's damage model is a little bit basic, so you kind of have to take it on faith sometimes that they're actually dead, but there was fire pouring out of him, so I think that's a pretty good indication. At this point I was going to go and disengage, but there was a F5 on the EWR reports, and whilst I'm dropping everything he just conveniently passes my 6, so I managed to get eyes on pretty quick. We merge and he goes vertical, so I'm going to do the same thing, but as I do it something else pops up, and initially I thought it was hostile and kind of shit myself, and I started manoeuvring in relation to him instead of the F5. It was actually a fish bed, so I didn't need to do that. What that meant was that the F5 capitalised on that brief moment of me not turning in relation to him, and he managed to get on my 6. He just Fox 2'd on me, so I'm just shitting flares everywhere. And because I don't have the nose authority that I normally would have, it's actually working in his favour whether he knows it or not. Normally in the Frogfoot, if you pull really hard, the F5 has to pull really hard as well to get guns on you, and when they do that they actually lose a shitload of speed, more so than you do by pulling hard, and you can use that as a way of getting around and getting on their 6 by just rating them. But because I can't pull hard enough to do that, he doesn't need to pull hard enough to make himself slow, so he manages to just sit on my 6 and there's nothing I can do about it. So what I'm trying to do is nose counter him whenever he takes shots at me, to jink his guns, and I'm climbing gradually through the turn to make him slow. And then he gets Fox 2'd by that friendly that was initially lining up on my 6 that gave him the opportunity to stay behind me in the first place. So it all came full circle and worked out eventually. Because we're damaged and we ditched everything at this point, I'm thinking now would definitely be the time to go back and rearm. But as we're egressing, another report pops up for another F5, and he was initially like 16 kilometers away, but as I kept running back, he just kept getting closer and closer and closer. And even though we're not in the best position to do anything about this, I feel like I have to deal with him, because otherwise he might have just chased me all the way back to Heatblur. And there's not going to be much I can do about it if I let him get within like 2 or 3 kilometers of my 6, because I'll just end up in the same position I was in with the last guy. So as we're coming in, he merges off our left wing. This is what I wanted to do with the last guy, so I'm going vertical. And I wanted to complete the vertical loop, because it means that if he follows through, he'll have bled off more speed than I will have, because the Frogfoot's energy retention is much better than the F5's. At least if he pulls hard enough to actually try and win the one circle. He actually intelligently didn't pull hard enough to win the one circle, but instead of disengaging away from me, he sort of disengages upwards. So all I've done is level out for a little bit to get my speed back up. And I'm doing like a sort of 2-tier climb. I'm pulling back in to get within his turn circle so he can't get guns on me as he dives back down. If he had tried to pull hard enough to get guns on, he would have just made himself ridiculously slow, which I could have capitalised on. As it is, he doesn't try and pull hard enough to do that, but in doing that he creates enough separation that I can just get back on his 6 anyway, so he was kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't. And he keeps turning with me. If he just dived and used his speed to get away, he'd be alright, but because I managed to get NR60 off, he does flare it, which I expected, but then he panics. And because he was just diving through all that, he ends up pancaking it into the ground. So, went pretty well. I lost count of how many ground kills we got, but we killed the O10 and the Skyhawk with guns. We assisted a friendly with killing the other F5 that was on our 6, and then we maneuver killed that last guy. Not sure if it was luck or judgment, to be honest, but he could have played it better than he did. Biggest mistake I made on this sortie was right now, you're about to see it. So on the approach to landing I started prepping from bloody miles away because I wasn't sure if the damage might have made me lose a flap or something. Thankfully it didn't, so we don't have to deal with asymmetric lift, but I ditched the remaining L60 on the off chance just anyway. Because I prepped from so far back, at some point I must have thought that I'd dropped my gear, but I actually didn't. So we just barely landed for literally no reason at all, which made me feel extremely dumb, but at least we recovered the airframe and got back to base okay. So that's going to be the end of this one, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed it, then be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. Hit that like button to help with the algorithm. If you've got any questions or comments, then leave them down below. If you want to help support the channel financially, then you can hit the thanks icon at the bottom of the video. You could buy a model through Air Models using my affiliate link in the description, or you could become a channel member for perks, which include early access to videos at the highest level. Also, if you didn't see the last video that I uploaded, or maybe even the one before that, I'm running a Phantom giveaway ahead of its release next Tuesday, so if you want to get in on that, then check out the video linked in the description. Beyond that, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.